I have carried this burden for many years. It's the kind of thing that's not spoken about, not with family, not with friends, and definitely not with strangers. But silence comes with a price. It keeps you locked within yourself, trapped by the echoes of your own suffering. I can't continue living this way, so here I am, finally speaking the words I've avoided for so long. I grew up in what many would consider a typical family. My brother, Caden Burke, was the kind of person everyone adored. He had an effortless charm and the ability to make people laugh, even when they didn't feel like it. My parents adored him, and teachers praised him. To the outside world, he seemed flawless, and for a long time, I believed it too. But there was a side to Caden that nobody else ever saw, a side that only showed itself late at night when everyone else was asleep. I was 10 the first time it happened. I woke up to find him standing in my room by my bed. He said he couldn't sleep and asked if he could stay with me. I didn't think twice about it. He was my brother, after all. Why would I? At first, it was subtle, a hand lingering for too long, a touch that felt wrong but was hard to define. I convinced myself that I was imagining things, that I was overreacting. But deep down, I knew. I knew something was terribly wrong. I wish I could tell you that I did something about it, that I screamed, told my parents, or ran away. But I didn't. Every single time, I froze. What do you do when the person hurting you is someone you're supposed to love? Someone who's supposed to love you? I know there are others who have experienced something similar. Maybe, like me, you were a child, confused and scared, unsure of what was happening or why it was happening to you. Maybe you too grew up carrying the weight of those experiences, unable to speak them aloud. If that's you, I want you to know you're not alone. Telling this story isn't easy. It's messy, painful, and filled with moments I wish I could erase. But it's my truth, and it's time I stopped running from it. So, if you're here, listening to this, I ask you to stay with me. Hear what I have to say. This isn't just about what happened to me. It's about what happens when we finally confront our past, no matter how dark it may be. If this resonates with you, or you think it could help someone else, please take a moment to like this video, share it, and subscribe to hear more stories like mine. Your support means everything to me as I continue to speak my truth. Caden Burke was always seen as the golden child, you know, the one who could do no wrong. He was 2 years older than me, and everyone seemed to love him. My parents often bragged about his grades, his smile, and the way he could charm anyone. Teachers adored him, neighbors waved at him, and even strangers would stop my mom to tell her what a polite young man he was. From the outside, we seemed like the perfect family. My dad worked long hours, but always made time for dinner. My mom stayed home, keeping the house immaculate and baking cookies that smelled straight out of a movie. We had birthday parties, family vacations, and matching Christmas sweaters. But now, looking back, it's clear there were cracks beneath the surface. My dad had a temper. He never hit us, but his yelling was enough to make you feel small, like you'd done something terribly wrong, even when you hadn't. My mom would smooth things over, pretending everything was fine, but the tension was always there. And Caden, well, Caden knew how to stay out of trouble. He knew how to say the right thing, do the right thing, and be the child my parents were proud of. When I was younger, I worshipped him. He was my big brother, my protector, the one who taught me how to ride a bike and shared his Halloween candy with me. He made me laugh when I was sad and stood up for me when other kids were cruel. I loved him, I trusted him, and for a long time I believed he loved and protected me too. The first time something felt off, I was about 7. We were playing hide and seek, and I was hiding in the closet in my parents' room. Caden found me, but instead of running off like usual, he sat next to me. He told me it was our secret spot, a place where no one else would find us. At the time, it felt special, like he had chosen me to share this secret with. But then he put his arm around me and let his hand linger in a way that wasn't playful. I remember feeling confused. It wasn't scary, just strange, like something wasn't quite right, but I didn't know why. As the years passed, those moments became more frequent. He found reasons to sit too close, to touch my arm or leg, to tickle me in ways that felt less playful and more like he was testing boundaries. I didn't understand it, and I didn't know how to explain the way my stomach twisted when he came into my room at night, or the way my skin crawled when he hugged me a little too long. I told myself it was normal that I was overthinking it, that brothers and sisters were supposed to be close. But the older I got, the harder it became to believe those lies. By the time I was 10, I was terrified of him. I hated going to sleep, knowing he might come into my room. I hated the way he smiled at me, like he knew something I didn't. And I hated myself for not saying anything, for not doing anything to make it stop. But how could I? He was Caden, the one everyone loved, the one my parents always praised. If I said something, who would believe me? Who would want to believe their perfect son could do something so awful? There was one night, I think I was about 12, when I finally gathered the courage to tell my mom I didn't want to share a room with him when we visited my grandparents. I told her I needed my own space because I was getting older. She laughed and said, "Oh, honey, Caden wouldn't hurt a fly. Don't be silly." And that was it. The conversation ended right there, so I kept quiet. I stayed quiet for years, but silence came at a cost. I couldn't look at him without feeling a mixture of anger, fear, and guilt. I still loved him. I didn't know how not to. He was my brother, but I also hated him for what he had done, for what he was still doing. That internal conflict tore me apart. How do you love someone who's hurt you in ways you can't even describe? How do you hate someone you're supposed to love? I didn't have answers then, and I still don't have them now. But I do know one thing. Pretending it didn't happen didn't make it go away. It didn't make the memories less real, didn't dull the pain, and didn't make me feel any less alone. Thanksgiving was always a big deal in our family. My mom loved to cook, and everyone would gather, cousins, aunts, uncles, all squeezed into one house, sharing food and stories. It was meant to be a time for laughter and love, but for me, it was the night everything changed. I was 17 by then. I had mastered pretending everything was fine, pretending I didn't dread family gatherings where I had to be around Caden, pretending I wasn't haunted by the memories of the nights he'd come into my room and done things I couldn't even bring myself to think about, let alone say out loud. But that night, I couldn't pretend anymore. The day had been chaotic, as always. The kitchen was full of the noise of dishes and chatter. My mom was giving orders about the turkey. My dad was joking with my uncles. And Caden was being Caden, charming everyone, making people laugh, helping my mom with the plates. He looked like the perfect son, the perfect brother, but I couldn't look at him without feeling sick. After dinner, when everyone was content, sprawled out in the living room, watching football or catching up, I wanted to escape. Escape from the noise, the laughter, and the sight of Caden sitting there like he hadn't stolen pieces of me I could never get back. So I went upstairs to the guest room, hoping for some quiet. I should have locked the door, but I didn't. I don't know why. Maybe part of me thought he wouldn't follow anymore, that I was too old, or that he'd changed. But I was wrong. It didn't take long before I heard the door creak open behind me. I froze, just like I always did, and there he was, standing in the doorway, smiling like nothing was wrong. He sat on the edge of the bed and made some excuse about wanting to talk and asking if I was okay. I don't remember what I said, probably something dismissive, trying to get him to leave. But he didn't. Instead, he reached out, put his hand on mine, and moved it to my leg. And before I could stop him, before I could say anything, his hand was where it shouldn't have been. It only lasted a few seconds, but I think he saw the horror and anger on my face. He laughed, like it was a joke, and then got up, saying something about how I shouldn't take everything so seriously. Then he walked out, leaving me sitting there, shaking, trying to make sense of what had just happened. I didn't go back downstairs that night. I couldn't. I stayed in that room, staring at the wall, feeling dirty, broken, and so angry. Since then, I've done everything I can to avoid him. I don't go to family gatherings unless I'm sure he won't be there. I've blocked his number, ignored his texts, and pretended not to see him when we cross paths in public. But no matter how far I run, he's always there, in the back of my mind. When I do see him, I laugh. I don't know why. Maybe it's my way of pretending it doesn't bother me, of convincing myself that I'm over it. But I know he knows. I see it in his eyes, how he avoids looking at me for too long, how he acts like everything is normal. He knows what he did, and he knows I remember. I've tried to move on. I've gone to therapy, read books about healing, done everything I can to leave the past behind. And for the most part, I'm okay. But then I see him, or hear his name, or catch a glimpse of someone who looks like him, and it all comes rushing back. The shame, the anger, the guilt. I hate that he still has power over me. I hate that after all these years, I'm still trying to figure out how to take it back. If you're wondering why I'm telling this story now, it's because I'm done running. I'm done pretending it didn't happen. This isn't just about that night or the nights before it. It's about standing up and saying, "This happened. It was real, and it wasn't my fault." I'm saying this for myself and for anyone else who's been made to feel like their pain doesn't matter. It does. You do. Sometimes I wonder why it still comes back to me. It's been years, decades, really. I've built a life for myself, moved forward in ways I never thought I could. I've gone to therapy, worked through the memories, and told myself over and over that I'm stronger than what happened to me. But there are moments when it feels as fresh as the day it happened. It's not constant, not like it used to be, but there are triggers, holidays, family gatherings, even a familiar smell or song that bring it all rushing back. And when that happens, I catch myself wondering, what if I just asked him? What if I confronted him and made him admit what he did? But then I remind myself that some answers don't bring peace. They just reopen old wounds. I don't think I'll ever fully understand why he did it. Was it about power? Was there something broken inside him? Or was it just because he could? These are questions I'll never have answers to, and I've learned to accept that. Healing isn't about getting closure from the person who hurt you. It's about finding it within yourself. For me, that means taking back the narrative, choosing to speak, to own my story instead of letting it own me. But even now, when I see him, when we're in the same room at a wedding or a family event, I can't help but laugh. Not because it's funny, but because it's the only way I know how to cope. It's this nervous habit, like my body's way of pretending everything is fine. And I see it in his face. He knows. He knows exactly what I'm thinking, what I'm laughing at. And I think that terrifies him more than anything. I used to hate him for what he did, for the way he stole my innocence, my trust. And part of me still does. But mostly, I pity him now. Because while I've done the work to heal, to move forward, he's the one who has to live with himself. He's the one who has to carry the knowledge of what he did every single day. To anyone watching this who has gone through something similar, I want you to know you're not alone. Your pain is real, no matter how long ago it happened or how much you've tried to bury it. Healing isn't a straight path. It's messy, and it takes time, but it's possible. And it starts with acknowledging your truth, even when it's hard. And to my brother, if you're watching this, you know what you did. I've spent too many years wondering why, but I'm done letting those questions take up space in my mind. This isn't about you anymore. It's about me taking back my power. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening to my story. It's not easy to share, but I hope it helps someone out there feel less alone. If you can relate, or if you have thoughts on why these memories linger, I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment and share your thoughts. I'm genuinely curious. If you think this story might help someone else, please like the video and share it. Healing starts with conversations like this, and I'm so grateful to have shared mine with you. Thank you. Truly.